for that person that you like. See, this person I like over here, I'm cool with this person. With this person, I'm particularly care for this person. I'm going to shun this person. I'm going to turn my nose up. I've had people actually, in the Word, turn their head before I'm looking at them, they turn their head so they don't have to speak. Not knowing I got a bad neck, but I can turn my head too. We can all play that stupid game. But when you come to the Lord, should you not be more mature? So what good does it do you knowing about some prophecy? You ain't got sense to be able to reach across and speak to your brother across the room. You don't have to worry about what's coming in the future. You got to deal with what's now. But go ahead.
3. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becometh saints.
Go ahead.
Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks.
Again, you rid all yourself of that. Because then the Lord said, you're going to give an account for every idle word that you speak. Verse number 5. Go ahead. What else are we not to do?
For this ye know, that no whoremonger, nor unclean person, nor covetous man, who is an idolater, hath any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God.
And that is our responsibility not to engage in this behavior. Nobody is going to pick you up and put you into God's kingdom. You're going to walk into it. And how you're going to walk into it is because you're going to walk in newness of life. You're going to walk in love. And that's how you're going to walk into the kingdom. And he's telling you what it is that you have to do. And again, it's important, the things that we say. Our conversation is important. Turn over to Colossians, the 3rd chapter. Because Paul in this letter to the Colossians also emphasizes our need to be mindful of our speech. 3, we're going to pick it up at verse number 5, 3 and 5. You go ahead when you get there.
Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth.
He's simply saying, you put these things to death. All these things that we're going to hear after this are things that are contrary to the Lord. He said, mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth. Go ahead.
Fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry.
Again, anything that you desire that's contrary to God, you have to rid yourself of that. Go ahead.
For which things sake the wrath of God cometh on the children of disobedience, in the which ye also walked sometime, when ye lived in them.
Again, we were all doing wrong at one time or another. But go ahead.
But now ye also put off all these.
He's going to continue to tell us the things that we have to work on. Go ahead.
Anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth.
He said you got to put off all these. He said anger. Again, you can be angry, but don't sin. He said you got to put these off. Anger and wrath, malice and blasphemy. He said in all evil speaking, all filthy communication, rid that out of your mouth. Go ahead.
Lie not one to another.
And sometimes that's hard. But you got to speak truth to your neighbor. He said, but lie not one to another. Go ahead.
Saying that ye have put off the old man with his deeds.
Go ahead.
And have put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him.
See, because again, if you're supposed to be different in your behavior, will not also your conversation also be different? But turn over to James, the 3rd chapter. Because seeing how all we've been reading about is the need to change our speech and to be mindful of the things that we say, we're going to find out not always going to be easy to do. James here is going to tell us about how difficult that is going to be to bring our tongue into subjection. But no matter how difficult it is something that we have to do. And again, when I say we, I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about self. And in that regard, I am selfish. When I say that, when I stand here and do a lesson, I'm not doing a lesson to you. I'm also engaged. Because I know it applies to me as well. So I never think that some kind of way I'm getting a pass. Some kind of way because I have the ability to teach that somehow the Lord is going to excuse me. If anything, it makes me more afraid. Because I understand it from a different perspective. Believe me, it's a totally different perspective from standing here and talking about the Word of God and listening. Because there, I knew all I had to do was just kind of like sit and do nothing. And I'd be cool. Now, I'm always concerned. When I say I'm always concerned, I want to make sure. I'll put it another way. I never want the Lord to say, you didn't tell them people what they needed to be told. No matter how many people are in front of me, they're always going to hear the same thing. What it is that you need to do in order to get into the kingdom. That's the only thing that's important. So when James talks about bringing your tongue into subjection, I understand the difficulty of it because it's something that I struggle with. And here James is talking about an unruly tongue, but he's talking about it also from the perspective of those who are aspiring to be teachers. But it applies to every individual. What does he say? 3 and 1.
My brethren, be not masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation.
He said, my brethren, be not many masters. Because see, everybody's not supposed to teach. But sometimes you have people who are desirous to do that. He said, but my brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation, the stricter judgment. Because it says, too much is given, much is required. Verse number 2, go ahead.
For many things we offend all.
All of us err, all of us stumble at something. He said, for many things we offend all. Go ahead.
If any man offend not in word.
That's the hardest thing to do. And that is to control the tongue. He said, but if any man offend not in word, what is he?
The same is a perfect man. And able also to bridle the whole body.
See, if you could bring that tongue in subjection, then the rest of you, you'll be able to take care of it. That's the hardest thing to do. Because again, the tongue is a reflection of a man's inner thoughts. Verse number 3. He's going to give us an analogy of just how powerful the tongue is as it relates to its size and your overall being. What does he say? 3 and 3.
Behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body.
Again, he's going to show you the influence of this small tongue. Because you have this massive animal, and you're controlling it just by a bridle. He said, we put bits in the horse's mouths that he may obey us. We turn about his whole body just by pulling on this bridle. Verse number 4. What else?
Behold, also the ships, which though they be so great.
Talking about his size. How are they moved about?
And are driven of fierce wind.
Go ahead.
Yet are they turned about with a very small helm. Whithersoever the governor listeth.
So the captain of the ship, how does he steer this ship? By this little rudder. This huge ship is directed again by this small rudder. This massive animal is also controlled but by a bridle. And that is how we are. We're controlled but by our tongue. What does he say? Verse number 5.
Even so the tongue is a little member.
Again, compared with the rest of the body. He said, even though the tongue is a little member, go ahead.
And boasteth great things.
Because it has great power. And the tongue lies life and death. Go ahead.
Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth.
Because again, with the tongue, you can ignite a huge flame. He said, for even so the tongue is a little member and boasted great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire is kindled. It can destroy a whole congregation, or it can destroy an individual. Just the workings of a tongue. Go ahead.
6. And the tongue is a fire.
Go ahead.
A world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members.
That it does what?
That it defileth the whole body.
It pollutes the whole individual. He said the tongue is a fire. He said a world of iniquity, a world of evil unto itself. He said, so is the tongue among our members that it pollutes or defiles the whole body and does what?
And set it on fire the course of nature.
Because it determines or destroys whoever follows. He says, and it sets on fire the course of nature. Go ahead.
And it is set on fire of hell.
Turn over to Matthew. Because he said that the tongue defiles the whole body. And we're going to see how that comes about. Matthew, the 15th chapter. You can hold your place. We coming back. Matthew 15. We're going to pick it up at verse number 10. Matthew 15 and 10. Because they had been chiding Jesus over his disciples. Because they were transgressing the traditions of the Father and the fact that his disciples were eating bread and they hadn't washed their hands beforehand. And Jesus was showing that really what mattered was to be obedient unto the Word of God. He went on to tell them that for worshiping him in accordance to man's commandments, the commandments of men, their worship was going to be for nothing. He's going to explain that really what it is that you eat, that doesn't defile you. And people have come here and taken this out of context. They're talking about, see, you can eat anything. This wasn't talking about the dietary law at all. What he's showing is what really defiles an individual. 15 and 10. Go ahead when you get there.
And he called the multitude and said unto them, hear and understand.
Go ahead.
Not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man.
See, what you eat does not defile you. And mind you, let me make sure I make this clear. He's not talking about the dietary law at all. What he's showing us is what defiles us. He says, see, if you eat with unwashed hands, because that's what they were talking about, it's like if something drops on the floor. If nobody is around, being honest with yourself, what's going to happen? And eat it. That old saying when you was little, when you dropped something, devil missed it, God kissed it, let's go. That's what's done. When nobody's around, but see, when somebody's looking, you're very proper. Let me go and throw this in the garbage. But if ain't nobody looking, you brush it off, you wash it off, put it on a plate. So he said, hey, that's not dirt. You are made out of dirt.
Right.
Dirt is not going to defile you. So when he says, hear and understand, not that which goeth in the mouth defileth the man, but what comes out of the mouth, that's what defiles you. Drop down to verse number 15. Go ahead.
Then answered Peter and said unto him, declare unto us this parable.
Go ahead.
And Jesus said, are ye also yet without understanding?
He's going to explain to him exactly what he meant. Go ahead.
Do not ye yet understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goeth into the belly?
Go ahead.
And is cast out into the draughts?
But go ahead.
For those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man.
He said they defile the man. What comes out of your mouth? Because again, what comes out of your mouth is a reflection of your inner thoughts. It is a reflection in the nature of who you are. And it shows you either to be righteous or it shows you to be wicked. He said what goes in your mouth, that don't defile you. But the things that proceed out of the mouth, because that comes from the heart. And they are what defiles the man. It shows what your thoughts are about. The things that you sit and discuss. They show you what it is that you are thinking. And they show whether or not you are polluted. Verse number 19. What does he say?
Out of the heart proceed evil thoughts.
Go ahead.
Murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemy.
All these things that are contrary unto the Lord. And how is it that, he said, for out of the heart proceed evil thoughts. And how are these thoughts shown to be? because the thoughts are reflected in one's conversation. So you shouldn't be talking about harming anyone. Certainly shouldn't be talking about committing adultery. There's no sense in having a conversation if a man is married about a woman. Why are you even sitting there talking about it? Because that's not to be. He said, but out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders and adulteries and fornications and thefts and bearing false witness and blasphemies. Verse 20.
These are the things which defile a man.
But what?
But to eat with unwashed hands defileth not a man.
That just means you might have a little dirt on your food. That's all that is. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't want to have the dirt in your mouth. That's what you want to make sure you eradicate yourself from. Go back to James 3, in verse number 7. Because again, the tongue is a powerful member. And it's difficult to bring into subjection, but still it must be done. And he goes on to show us. He showed us the power of the tongue. Now, again, he's going to show us in how difficult it is to bring it into subjection. 3 and verse 7. Go ahead when you get there.
For every kind of beasts, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed.
He said, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And hath been tamed of mankind.
See, he said all things can be brought into subjection. But what about that tongue? Go ahead.
But the tongue can no man tame.
He said no man can subdue. Go ahead.
It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison.
Full of deceit. Go ahead. Because what do we do with the tongue?
Therewith bless we God, even the Father.
So we praise and give worship unto God. And what?
And therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God.
The same mouth, the same lips that we give praise unto God. We turn around and we condemn and allow on those that was made in the image of God. He said that should not be. Go ahead.
Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing.
Go ahead.
My brethren, these things ought not so to be.
Again, praising God on one hand and being a talebearer or slanderer on another. He said that should not be. Go ahead.
Though they fountains send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter.
He said you can't find that in nature, can you? He said you can't find a place where the same place, sweet water is coming out of it along with bitter. He said that's not going to be. Go ahead.
And the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries.
Go ahead.
Are they vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh.
Again, you can't find that in nature, neither should you find that in men. Your words should be words to encourage and to edify. Should not be words, certainly, of blasphemy, certainly not of malicious gossip, certainly not of slander, certainly not of deceit. Because no matter how much you praise God on one hand, when you do evil to your neighbor on the other, using your mouth, it is of no benefit. You have to be, again, mindful of what it is that we are doing in our attempt to serve the Lord. Because he said, the engrafted word is able to save your soul. But you got to be doers of the word and not hearers only. And see, we can't just do those things that are convenient for us. We got to do it all. Same one said, don't steal, don't kill, don't commit adultery. He's telling us, don't bear false witness. So he tells us to be forgiving, we have to be merciful. All those things we should be inspired to do. Why is that? Because those are the attributes of the God that we serve. Those are the attributes of the God whom we say we want to be like. So we start to acquire that now so that we can become like him later. But go ahead. Verse number 13.
Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you?
He said, he's talking about somebody that has some understanding. That is the one that should be you should be seeking as a teacher. He said, who's a wise man and endued with knowledge that is among you? Go ahead.
Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom.
I always say, you don't have to say what it is that you feel. You don't have to say what you believe. Your actions will show that. You don't have to tell nobody, say, I'm a man of God, I know the Lord. Your actions will tell a person how acquainted you are with God. Because the more you act like God, then that's the more you know Him. But go ahead.
But if ye have bitter envying and strife in your heart.
But see, you have some that consider themselves to be wise. But in their mind, they say, but if you have bitter envy and strife in your heart, a spirit of contention and just self-advancement, what did he say?
Glory not.
Go ahead.
Lie not against the truth.
He said, don't glory over that, because that spirit is not coming from God. He said, and lie not against the truth. Verse number 15.
This wisdom descendeth not from above.
But what is it?
But is earthly,
sensual,
devilish.
This wisdom is of man. It's contrary to that of God. Verse 16. Go ahead.
But where envying and strife is, there is confusion in every evil work.
And this is what man's wisdom will produce. He said, but where envying and strife is, there is confusion, and he said, in every evil work. But what about the wisdom that comes from God? Go ahead. But those that are endowed with that wisdom, what is it that they're going to be? How are they going to be? Go ahead.
But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable,
go ahead,
gentle, and easy to be entreated.
And that's a person that has godly wisdom. That person is seeking to be peaceful with all men. And understanding, as Paul said, if it be possible. Because it's not going to be possible. But at the same time, you are not at the heart of the contention. You are not at the heart of the problem. You're not a participant in the foolishness that goes on. And it goes on. Unfortunately. But he's saying that's not godly wisdom. He said wisdom that is from above is first pure and then peaceable, gentle and easy to be entreated, willing to yield, full of what?
Full of mercy and good fruit.
Go ahead, and what?
Without partiality and without hypocrisy.
Again, you try to live peaceably with all men. You are treating all the same. When I say you treat all the same, there are people that you are more familiar with. You're just friends with them. You get along with them better than you do with someone else. You may have the same things in common. There's a natural common bond. But then that doesn't mean you shun the other person. Or you look down on the other person. Shouldn't be anything such as cliques in the church. Cliques should have ended in high school. Right. I always said, I kid you not, I used to say, man, I'm so glad I'm grown. Because these kids get on my nerves. I always saw myself as being more mature than others. I didn't realize that grown people ain't nothing but old kids. They do the same thing. Listen, man, there be people 50, 60, and what are they doing? Doing the same thing when they was 13 and 14, talking about people. I said, man, they're not advanced. And that's what you find. Wisdom knows no age. You find it in the young, you find it in the old. The same with foolishness. You find that in the young, and you find that also in the old. But verse 18, and this is it, go ahead.
And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace.
Turn over to Revelation. Because you gotta tame this tongue with the Spirit of God just to reside with you. Turn to Revelation 16. The Lord hates evil speech. He hates it because of the destruction and damage it causes. Here we see the physical lives are going to be lost because of evil communication. 16, we're going to pick it up at verse number 16 and 12. Thank you. 16 and 12. What's going to take place? Go ahead when you get there.
And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates.
Go ahead.
And the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared.
And what the Lord is talking about, this is future, this is a prophecy that's taking place, that's talking about this great conflict that's going to take place between East and Western Europe. I'm not really dealing with that right now, but he said the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. That's talking about Russia and her allies, and she's going to come against the West, Western Europe. But I came here for this next verse. What else did he see? Go ahead.
And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet.
And what he's talking about when he say, I saw unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, it just meant that their words were unclean. And there were words that was promoting war. People died. Countless numbers of people died. Why? All because of falsehoods that come out of people's mouths. You remember the phrase, weapons of mass destruction? They got weapons of mass destruction. They got weapons of mass destruction. An untold number of people died for the lies that were told by another individual. What weapons of mass destruction? But because they were able to say that, and nobody held them accountable, they sent innocent people over to do devilish deeds and killed a lot of people, all because of unclean words, words that held no truth. And Lord hates lying. See, because if you think about it for 1 second, if you were able to refrain men from speaking anything evil, think of how the world would be. Think of the peace that you would have in the world. But we know that's not going to be the case, so we don't have to ponder that too long. But words matter. They are important. Turn over to Proverbs 25. Because words brought about war. And we're going to see that words themselves are like weapons. Proverbs 25. What does Solomon say? 25 and 23. You go ahead when you get there.
The north wind driveth away rain.
Go ahead.
So doth an angry countenance a backbiting tongue.
He said, now the north wind, when he said the north wind drives away rain, it brings forth the rain. He said, just like an angry countenance, a backbiting tongue. One that is, a person that is slandering another is going to bring the anger and the ire from the individual that he's spreading false rumors about. Verse number 8, and go ahead.
Go not forth hastily to strive, lest thou know not what to do in the end thereof.
In other words, he said, if you go forth to deal with a situation, understand you got to make sure that you are dealing with facts and not speculation, so that you don't embarrass yourself in the end.
Right.
He said, go not forth hastily to accuse somebody. He said, least thou know not what to do in the end thereof. When you find yourself to either come to the wrong conclusion or listen to something that was not right. Always, that's what I always say, when somebody tells me something, I listen. But I always know it's two sides to a story. I was even young. You know what you do when you're young? You tell things from the perspective of what's going to benefit you. I didn't want to go to bed. I wanted to stay up. And it was late. So what I do, I'm young. I'm done. I punch myself in the nose. Nose started bleeding. So then I went and told my mother, my nose is bleeding. I didn't tell her I punched myself in the nose. I just told her my nose was bleeding. And so she took the face cloth, wet it, cleaned my nose off, and said, now go to bed. I said, well, that didn't work. But at the same time, what was going on? I'm telling it from the perspective that I'm thinking is going to benefit me. I'm only telling part of the story. Because if I told I punched myself in the nose, ain't no telling what would happen. So that's what we do. And as I say, adults, sometimes they don't grow up. They're just old kids. They do the same thing. They tell a story from their perspective. So you have to listen and you say, okay. And when I can get the rest of the story, it's just like I can't talk about the movie. I can't give you a fair assessment unless I see the whole movie. But go ahead. He said, don't go forth hastily to accuse somebody. These thou know not what to do in the end thereof, when your neighbor has put thee to shame. Go ahead.
Now, debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another.
In other words, you ask them openly and honestly. You're engaged in conversation with them. And there is no sense in spreading it abroad. There's no sense involving a whole lot of other people about conflict or a problem you may have with another individual. Don't introduce everybody else into the problem. He said, debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another. Go ahead.
These he that hear did put thee to shame, and thine infamy turn not away.
Verse number 18.
A man that beareth false witness against his neighbor is a mark.
Go ahead.
And a sword, and a sharp arrow.
And again, words are like weapons. They harm, and they can do damage far beyond that of a physical weapon. See, somebody can hit you in the head with a stick. Your head will hurt for a while, and you're going on about your business. But they can cut you with words when you're little, and you grow up with that and never get over it. You have to be mindful of what you say, how you say it, and to whom you say it. Because I said earlier, words, they matter. And they're just like water that goes over a dam. Once it's released, you can't bring it back up. You can't bring them back. You can't retract it. The only thing you can say is, I'm sorry. And that's like putting salve on a wound. Because it's done. So we have to be very careful in the things that we say. Because, again, they're like weapons. We know how to be nice to one another when we want something. But we always have to remember to be respectful in the same way during times of contention. But turn over to Genesis 39. Because when it says words can inflict serious harm, we're going to see an example of that. And again, why the Lord hates lying, bearing false witness. Genesis 39. But we're going to look at somebody who suffered as a result of someone bearing false witness. And this is concerning Joseph. And this also shows what Solomon said in the new under the sun. 39:1. So Joseph had been sold into slavery, but he's going to rise to prominence. But he's now in the house of Potiphar, also of Egypt. 39:1. You go ahead when you get there. And see what takes place with Joseph.
And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither.
Go ahead. Drop down to verse 4. Thank you.
And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand.
Now it said Joseph had been brought into Egypt. And it says, and Potiphar, officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, he said he brought him on the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And it said that Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him. And all that he had, he gave into the hands of Joseph. Joseph was over all of it. verse number 6. And go ahead.
And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand.
Go ahead. This is how much he trusted Joseph. Go ahead.
And he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored.
Go ahead.
And it came to pass after these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph.
Go ahead.
And she said, lie with me.
So she made an open invitation to Joseph. What was his reply? Go ahead.
But he refused, and said unto his master's wife,
what?
Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand.
Go ahead.
There is none greater in this house than I.
And again, he had that position because Potiphar had elevated him to that position. He said, all that is in the master's house, I'm over. He said, behold, my master, he don't even know. He said, my master, what is with me in the house, and he's committed all that he has into my hand. He said, there's none greater in this house than I am. Neither what?
Neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee.
Go ahead.
Because thou art his wife.
Go ahead.
How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?
He said, how can I lay with you? More importantly, how can I sin against God? Go ahead.
And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day,
badgering him. Go ahead.
that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her.
Look, can't nobody force you to do nothing. All you got to do is simply say no. Sometimes that's too difficult to do. But Joseph is sure you have to operate with constraint. You have to show discipline. Joseph said, no, I'm not going to sleep with you. I'm not going to lie with you. Even though she kept badgering him. Go ahead.
11. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business. There was none of the men of the house there within.
Go ahead. And what did she do?
And she caught him by his garment.
Go ahead.
Saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out.
So now he's in a situation. And that's the danger when it talks about bearing false witness. Because as the person who is the victim, there's nothing you can do. You can't stop a person from lying on you. And so this individual, after she had been badgering Joseph, she grabbed him and told him, sleep with me. And he got away from her. But he left a garment in her hand. He ran, verse number 13, then what happened?
And it came to pass.
So she's been rejected. And it's a wicked person. What did she do?
When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and was fled forth.
Go ahead.
That she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying,
what did she tell?
See, he hath brought in Hebrew unto us to mock us. Came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice.
So now she's going to get the sympathy of the other men. She said, first and foremost, he's not like one of us. This is one of his Hebrews that he done brought in here to mock us. And they jealous because Joseph's over them. And what he's done, he's came in to sleep with me. And I cried out with a loud voice. Her cry, she cried. But basically she was lying to the top of her tongue. I mean, the top of her voice. This goes on today. When women will falsely accuse men of doing something. Or vice versa, the man will falsely accuse the woman. But in this case, she's accusing Joseph of attempting to rape her. Go ahead.
15. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out.
Go ahead.
She laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home.
And now she's going to repeat this lie again. Go ahead.
And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, the Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me.
Go ahead.
And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, after this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled.
Immediately he was angry. He didn't do enough investigating. He just took what his wife said concerning this Hebrew that this man had brought in. And immediately he was mad. So he took Joseph. And what happened to Joseph? Verse number 20.
And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison.
How many people, how many men are in prison today? Because a person decided, a woman decided, I'm going to cry wolf. Far too many that has happened to. Far too many. And that's why the Lord hates lying. Because what it does, it distorts the whole situation. So now Potiphar is mad at Joseph and has Joseph cast into prison, all because this woman had bore false witness against him. Say Joseph's master took him and put him in prison. Go ahead.
A place where the king's prisoners were bound.
And where was he?
And he was there in the prison.
Turn over to Proverbs 18. She destroyed his reputation. As I say, as Solomon said, there's nothing new that is under the sun. Proverbs 18. Because what happens? When I say words can harm you. What people do is they use words to distort and to poison another individual's mind against the person that they're slandering or lying upon. 18. We're going to pick it up at verse number 6. 18. Verse number 6. And that's why it is so important when you are being told something that you basically, you have to make sure. Like I said, I don't accept anything. I listen, and then I say, I'll make up my mind when I know the whole story. Because people are always going to tell you something from their perspective. They're always going to make themselves favorable. That's how it's always going to be. And so you have to listen. And we're too eager or ready to accept a bad report about an individual. No matter who it is. But 18 and 6. Go ahead.
A fool's lips enter into contention.
Go ahead.
And his mouth calleth for strokes.
Uh-huh.
A fool's mouth is his destruction.
You're talking about his conversation is what's going to lead to his downfall. He said now, a fool's lips enter in contention. He's always starting things, and his mouth calls for a beating. He said in the fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. Because by his words, he's going to be condemned. By his own words, he's going to get himself in trouble. But go ahead, verse number 8.
The words of a talebearer are as wounds.
And what do?
They go down into the innermost parts of the belly.
Again, because they cause much harm. And these are wounds, again, you could get a beating and get over that. But when you've been lied on, you're falsely accused, it's not shown to be truthful, then you live with that the rest of your life. But turn over 1 Kings 21. Because we're going to look at another individual who was harmed because by someone who was bearing false witness. And this is Ahab, the wicked king. 21, 1 Kings 21. Verse number 4. Now Ahab is going to go home complaining to his wife about a situation. And look at it. What her solution is going to be. And that is to be to lie on the person. The 21 and 4. Go ahead when you get there.
And Ahab came into his house heavy and displeased because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him.
Go ahead.
For he had said, I will not give thee the inheritance of my fathers. And he laid him down upon his bed and turned away his face and would eat no bread.
So Ahab, what he wanted was, he wanted Naboth's vineyard. Naboth wouldn't give it to him. So now he's disheartened over this whole thing. He done laid down upon his bed and turned away his face, and he's so upset he can't eat. Go ahead. Verse number 5.
But Jezebel his wife came to him and said unto him, Why is thy spirit so sad,
Go ahead.
that thou eatest no bread? He said unto her, Because I spake unto Naboth the Jezreelite, and said unto him, Give me thy vineyard for money.
And because he wouldn't sell it to him, go ahead.
Or else, if it please thee, I will give thee another vineyard full.
And what was Nabal's answer?
And he answered, I will not give thee my vineyard.
But listen to his wife. Go ahead.
And Jezebel his wife said unto him, Dost thou now govern the kingdom of Israel? Arise and eat bread, and let thine heart be merry.
Because what is she going to do?
I will give thee the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite.
Instead of telling him, look, man, don't you have enough? She said, are you not the king? She said, don't you govern the kingdom of Israel? You go ahead, you eat, and let your heart be merry. Don't you concern yourself about this. I'm going to get you the vineyard of Naboth. So what did she do? Verse number 8. Go ahead.
So she wrote letters in Ahab's name.
So she forged his name. Go ahead.
And sealed them with his seal. And sent the letters unto the elders and to the nobles that were in his city.
Go ahead.
Dwelling with Naboth.
What did she put in the letter?
And she wrote in the letter, saying, Proclaim a fast, and set Naboth on high among the people.
Go ahead.
And set 2 men, sons of Belial, before him, to bear witness against him, saying,
What?
Thou didst blaspheme God and the king.
When you get all the people assembled, and then you put Naboth front and center, and then you get these 2 evil men, 2 sons of Belial before him, to bear false witness against him, saying that he blasphemed God and the king, then what are they to do?
And then carry him out and stone him that he may die.
She said, what I'm going to have him do is be put to death. I'm going to lie on him. And then they're going to kill him. Then you can take possession of his vineyard. Go ahead.
And the men of his city, even the elders and the nobles who were the inhabitants in his city, did as Jezebel had sent unto them.
Go ahead.
And as it was written in the letters which she had sent unto them.
Go ahead.
And proclaimed a fast.
So what it was, she got somebody to go along with this charade also. But go ahead.
And set Naboth on high among the people. And there came in 2 men, children of Belial, and sat before him. And the men of Belial witnessed against him, even against Naboth, in the presence of the people, saying, Naboth did blaspheme God and the king.
What did they do to Naboth?
Then they carried him forth out of the city, and stoned him with the stones that he died.
So then Ahab was able to take possession of his vineyard. But it all started with what? It all started with a lie. And so in order to fulfill the desire of this covetous king, then his wife just had somebody bear false witness against Naboth. And that led to his death. Words do matter. They are important. But turn over to Proverbs 26. Because Solomon makes it clear. You see, Proverbs 26. When a person engages in malicious gossip, they are doing it with the intent of harming an individual. 26, we're going to pick it up at verse number 3. Because what did Satan do? Jesus called him a murderer. He said he was a murderer from the beginning. And the truth was not in him. He was a liar and a father of lies. So he used his lies to commit murder. He used his lies to get Adam and Eve to go contrary to God. When people, not generally, when people lie on you, they are doing it for the purpose of causing you harm. Sometimes the foolish people, they just carry the lie. They just continue to carry the water. Proverbs 26. We're going to pick it up at verse number 3. 26 and 3. You go ahead when you get there. What does he say?
A whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back.
And that's what's going to happen with people who continue to engage in conversation that is contrary to the Lord. He said a whip for the horse, he said a bridle for the ass, he said and a rod for the fool's back. Because it is a fool that engages in malicious gossip and that slanders another. verse number 4.
Answer not a fool according to his folly,
In other words, he said, don't descend down unto his level. Go ahead.
lest thou also be like unto him.
In other words, don't encourage a person in his foolishness. You simply just ignore it. Sometimes people will try to engage me in conversation concerning the word, and I've gotten better. Because usually early on in your zeal, you want to share this word with everybody. But then you come to realize, you know what? They just want to show you what they know or what they think they know. And when you realize they're not listening, you move on. My wife had the best analogy. When the Lord said, don't cast your pearls before swine, she said, you wouldn't take, if you had $1 million and you gave 10,000 and they burn it up, would you give them another 10? No. Same way with the word. When you see they're not listening, just move on. But he said, don't answer a fool according to his folly. He said, least thou also be like unto him. Go ahead.
Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit.
And Solomon's not contradicting himself. Sometimes he's just letting you know that sometimes, though, you got to answer a man in his foolishness. You have to set the record straight or set him straight. Drop down to verse number 17 and go ahead.
He that passeth by and meddleth with strife belonging not to him.
What is he like?
It's like one that taketh a dog by the ears.
It's like you just asking for trouble. You know you're going to have some problem. He said, now the one that passes by and meddling with strife not belonging unto him, he's like the one that takes a dog by the ears. Again, you asking for trouble. Go ahead. Verse number 18.
As a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death.
Because somebody innocent is bound to get hurt. Go ahead.
So is the man that deceiveth his neighbor.
And said what?
And said, am not I in sport?
He said, as a madman who casted firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceives his neighbor and says, I was just playing. I was just doing this in jest. But go ahead.
Where no wood is, there the fire goeth out.
Go ahead.
So where there is no till,
what happened?
The strife ceases.
He said, look, if you don't put logs on the fire, it's going to go out. But it's just like a talebearer. If you don't continue to tell, then that strife is going to cease. So just like you're not to be a talebearer, you're not to be a gossiper, but at the same time, don't you participate in it. Don't you encourage it. Don't you take somebody else's water and they come to you with some mess and you say, I'm going to take this mess and I'm going to take it over here and give it to somebody else so we can further the mess. But go ahead. Verse number 21.
As coals are to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife.
Go ahead.
The words of a talebearer are as wounds.
And what do they do?
They go down into the innermost parts of the belly.
Because what they do is they ruin a person's reputation, his character. In the sense that Joseph is in prison for what? Something he didn't even do. So they're looking upon him as an individual who tried to lay hold of his master's wife. Why? Because he had done something? No, because that's what she said. Nabal lay dead. Why? Because he had done something? No, because they say he blasphemed the king and God. Or wounds. I mean, words are as wounds. They matter. He said the words of a talebearer as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. Go ahead.
Burning lips and a wicked heart are like a potsherd covered with silver the dross.
Go ahead.
He that hateth dissembleth with his lips.
And does what?
And layeth up deceit within him.
Again, when a person lies on another individual, it is for the purpose of causing that individual harm. No more than that. Go ahead.
When he speaketh fair, believe him not. There are 7 abominations in his heart. Because
you always have to be mindful of what it is that you are being told. You always have to be mindful of the conversation that you are engaging in. You just can't take what a person says. You have to give thought to it. When it says to listen, that means you listen intently and you are evaluating. But go ahead.
Whose hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein.
Go ahead.
he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him.
Uh-huh.
A lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it.
Go ahead.
And a flattering mouth worketh ruin.
Again, people lie on others for the whole purpose of causing them harm. I remember a lady once came to me and she told me, she said, Lucius, I just want to see what you think about this. My husband did such and such and such and such. Now, what do you think? I said, what I think is you want me to side with you so you can go and tell your husband what Lucius said. But I don't know what your husband's done. All I know is your side of the story. And I also know you never talked to me before about any situation. You didn't even speak to me. So what I'm thinking is you just want somebody to agree with you so you can say Lucius said. Now go and tell your husband that. But turn over Proverbs 20. Because a foolish person is always going to be starting trouble. Look, when I say this, I don't mean no harm. I've never been one about mess. I've never had. I don't want nobody. I got my own mess. 20. Because the Lord is telling you, don't. It's showing you don't want to participate with foolishness. 20 and 3. You don't want to be starting it, and you don't want to be the one that's helping it continue. 20 and 3. Go ahead when you get there. What does Solomon say?
It is an honor for a man to cease from strife.
He said it's honorable for this to take place. He said it is an honor for a man to cease from strife. But what about a fool?
But every fool will be met.
It's always going to be starting something. Drop down to verse number 19. Go ahead.
He that goeth about as a talebearer reveal his secret.
Go ahead.
Therefore meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips.
Don't associate with him or her. He said the one that goes about as a talebearer reveal his secrets. Man, let me tell you about so-and-so. I don't really need to know. Is it really helping the situation? Are we trying to come to a solution here? What is this for? Just another person that I could turn against this other individual by telling things. Because the whole thing about it is like this. This is how I see it. We're all supposed to be trying to do something. We're all on a quest trying to get into God's kingdom. Me knowing something about somebody, what they've done or are doing, that ain't helping them, and it ain't helping me. So if it ain't helping me, it's like I said with a lesson. What has this got to do with me? And that's how I evaluate it. That's how I look at it. Turn over to Proverbs 16. We're almost done. Proverbs 16. We're going to pick up that verse. Number 27. Proverbs 16 and 27. What does Solomon say? Because again, he's telling us about the need to not engage in malicious